Welcome to Comics and Manga Programming in Schools and Libraries, presented by LibraryPass and Comics Plus. My name is Gila Charles Gonzalez. I'm the Chief Content Officer for LibraryPass and the moderator for today's session. I'm excited to be joined by our guests today, who will be sharing their expertise and insights on programming for comics and manga in schools and libraries. Joining us from New York Public Library, we have Tabrizia Jones. From Wyandotte Public Schools in Michigan, we have George Purdu. And from Chesterfield County Schools in Virginia, we have Danielle Schafer. Each of them is going to give us brief presentations on some work that they've done in their schools and libraries related to comics and manga programming. And then we'll have a conversation at the end. Today's webinar is presented by LibraryPass. We curate high-interest, immersive digital content that helps libraries and schools expand their reach and engagement without breaking their materials budget. Our Comics Plus platform offers unlimited simultaneous access to thousands of digital comics, graphic novels, manga, and picture books curated for schools, academic, and public libraries. You can learn more and sign up for a free demo account at comicsplusapp.com, and you can also find us on various social networks. And now, enjoy today's session. And we're going to kick things off with Danielle, and she's going to tell us about visual storytelling and school-wide activities.
Hi, I'm Danielle Schafer. I'm the head librarian at Salem Church Middle School in Chesterfield, Virginia. This is my third year as the head librarian at Salem Church Middle. Every year we start our school year with a school-wide read. My principal, when I first came to Salem, the goal was to foster community and really build a culture of reading. And then on top of all of that, support our curriculum goals, enhance literacy skills, incorporate critical thinking, promote inclusion, and just have a common text so we could have a common discussion and language to bring everyone together. When we started the whole school read, the first year we started with a traditional novel by Jason Reynolds. We did Look Both Ways, and it was the very first one I ever organized. And my principal really wanted to have a culminating school-wide initiative. So the second year, after being in our library and seeing what our kids were interested in, I wanted to choose something else, that another format that would intrigue them. And we got a subscription to Comics Plus at the end of the previous year. And so I decided to start with do a graphic novel as our whole school read. When we choose our whole school read, we have to have something that is equitable and accessible to everyone. So the year before, we didn't have print copies of everything. We had a digital copy. So Comics Plus allowed us to have a digital copy of every graphic novel for every student to access, whether at home or in school. But as supportive as my principal is about reading and the library, graphic novels is not really his forte. He has a very hard time processing the images, does not value them as much as probably some of us do, or even the kids do. So I had to really sell him on why graphic novels were really important, other than the kids are checking them out, as well as some teachers too who are not into them. So I started with the circulation data, and every quarter I sent him a report showing how many books are checked out, how much of that is graphic novels and manga. And I would say it's close to half. We're about 40 to 45% of our checkouts are graphic novels and manga. And our collection of graphic novels are very small compared to our other books. So they're in very high demand, which is why we also chose Comics Plus, because then kids could have more access to more graphic novels. So in order to sell him, I did as much research as I possibly could. I found some articles from School Library Journal. Northwestern Center for Talent and Development has had some really great research and compiled some other research that talks about how graphic novels really support visual literacy, foster creativity, and our number one thing is engaging our readers. The visual literacy part, there's amazing data and research coming out about how text and image are being combined to um, foster greater critical thinking of elements of storytelling, from foreshadowing to character development, along with making inferences, right? So some of the other research too that I was able to sell him on was how processing images and text in your brain creates extra work for your brain. So you're going back and forth. And I think this helped him really understand that the art is valuable along with the text and context. And then the real world application. Our kids are constantly on social media, YouTube, streaming, everything. So they need to learn how to read, analyze, and decode what they're seeing versus what they're reading, and seeing if they align and what they can synthesize and analyze from there. And then graphic novels alone, the creativity, right? Seeing beautiful artwork and how that enhances the story, how it gives more context clues. And for our friends who are not very linear thinking, right? In school, we're taught you start at this, you go in the middle, and then you have an end. Where, especially with manga, their brains are working backwards, it's a different format. So it keeps them a little bit more engaged and you're working your brain in a different way. And then it just makes storytelling even more interesting, right? We can show them the example from a graphic novel and then bridge that to a paragraph or chapter and say, how would you draw this? What details would you need? And it shows, their understanding of character, even social emotional learning. Our readers, we are a very pretty diverse school. We do not have a dominant culture or ethnicity within our school. We also have a we're a school of about 930 students. We have a growing ELL population, mostly Spanish speakers, but we also have some Cambodian, Arabic, and Pashtun actually this year. And so being able to engage those readers who are just learning English, graphic novels, the imagery alone allows them to still be a part of what we're doing as a whole school. We also have students with intellectual disabilities, and it's easier to sometimes not include them, and especially in stories that are complex. So a graphic novel allowed them to still see the pictures and have a conversation about what was going on in the story and how that related to them. And being in a school, I chose a book that was for middle schoolers, Awkward, that really focused on the middle school experience. And then, of course, graphic novels are really great at representation so that you can see yourself in those images. And typically, we talk about a lot about race and culture, but then there's like the the groups of, the nerdy kids or the athletes or, the artists. And so being able to have those images and see what they look like, I think that creates a great mirror as well. So that's how I sold him and a lot of the teachers on um, using a graphic novel and why it is actually reading. I presented them with that research, our circulation data, and then I went that one step further about how we were going to connect it to our curriculum. And so our school, in our counties, every school has to have a goal for the year. And so one of our biggest goals is writing and teaching kids how to persuasively write. And so we were chose a very specific writing tool. And uh, the book that I chose was, like I said, Awkward. Um, and if you don't know the story of Awkward, it's about a kid who moves, a middle schooler who moves to a new school, and she's trying to make friends and fit in and find her people. Well, that's all of middle school for everybody or school for everyone. And sometimes even when you are going to a new job, right? So I figured most kids could identify with this. And one central theme within the or topic within the book is two competing clubs. It's their conflict about who is going to get the precious table at the club fair. Well, our school has no clubs and or had no clubs. And so, in order, if we're going to foster community through reading, how else can we foster community? So, I had the idea to connect our graphic novel with starting clubs at our school, and our kids would have to write persuasive essays about what clubs they would like to see at school and how it can make a positive impact on our school community and on them. So, that was that curriculum connection, the writing, the persuasiveness, and that's how we got our English teachers on board as well. The other buy-in for teachers is building their prior knowledge. I sent in the presentation that I sent out, there was a detailed reading calendar. We had guest readers. So teachers volunteered to read a chapter. And that's how it was played in the classrooms because it took some pressure off of some of the teachers who don't know how to read graphic novels. And then they learned how to read them and how the art impacts and enhances the story. Um, One of the biggest things I know is logistics. So we're lucky within our school that we start the very first week, if not the second week of school. We have an enrichment period every morning. So that allows us the time and space to actually implement this program. Um, and we usually take about 4 weeks to really go through the whole school read. Even with a graphic novel, that was pretty short because there's lots of things in that first, month of school. Um, as I mentioned, we have our students with intellectual disabilities and our ELL students. And so giving them summaries was also helpful so that their support system could help them really understand on a deeper level what we were reading and what everything meant on top of the images. So the greatest impact, I'd said what we talked about our curriculum. So our writing goal was focused on the writing tool, Claim Evidence and Reasoning, a CER. So every content area was being asked to do CER. So this gave us a common place and a common start for everybody in our school, every teacher, every staff member to really work on what a CER is, what it looks like. And that's where then we went to then the persuasive essay. And from there, because we had such success using graphic novels, English teachers continued to use them in their classrooms for teaching, characterization, and inferencing. We had social studies teachers using Comics Plus and the comics on there to teach about the Continental Railroad because it was such a complex moment in history for some students. And so it allowed them to have greater access to it. Um, when the kids started writing, our experience reading and then writing about something that really interested them allowed them to have common language and have a connection that starting the school year they may not have had. Um, they got to know other people within those smaller groups, those enrichment groups that we had. And then from start to finish, they were able to see the impact of reading something that they love, the format that they love, doing it for fun, and then how they could take it one step further and they could really impact the world around them. And our question to them was, if you could start a club at Salem, what would it be? So by the end of our school-wide read and our school-wide write, we had 920, over 920 essays submitted. After they submitted their essays, they could then submit an application that they really wanted their club to exist at our school. So we had 40 applications. We ended up with 16 clubs and 235 club members. And we brought it back this year, and now we have 27 clubs, and over 450 kids are in clubs. So we took our whole school read, graphic novels, and we're just able to show not only my principal, but our teachers that they are valuable, that they can connect to their content, and then they can have a greater impact if we choose to help bridge them. I have some, I don't know if you guys will get any of these links, but as I said, uh, School Library Journal has a lot of articles. These are some of the research papers here that are coming out about how the brain is working when we're reading images and text, especially if you have an administration that really wants to see real black and white numbers. This is a really great place to start. Thank you.
All right. My name is George Purdu, and I am the library director for Wyandotte Public Schools. Wyandotte is a suburb of Detroit. We're a little bit south of Detroit. Our student population is about 4,500 students. We have 4 elementaries, a middle school, and a high school. I've been in the district for over 20 years. I served my first 7 as a media specialist at our middle school. I was 2 years technology coach, and kind of in between that, I was a middle school social studies teacher and a high school social studies teacher. And I've been in this role now for about a year. I didn't think I'd ever be able to come back into this type of role working in our school libraries. But it has been something that has been great for me, and really we're trying to implement a whole school-wide approach to what we're doing curriculum-wise, and graphic novels and manga have been something that I've always thought was important. I mean, it was something that when I first came on board 20 years ago into our middle school that I brought in, and at the time it was definitely an interesting take on the way that some of our staff looked at it. Our students never really, I mean, our students embraced it. And over the last 20 years, even though that for the last 12 or 13, I wasn't in that role, I definitely still had the passion for that. And I'll mention a little bit about the club that we started at our high school when I was there. And so now kind of being back in this role for our school libraries, it's something that I've put as one of my priority targets, and the buy-in for it has been excellent so far. So it is one of our highest circulated materials that we have. It's been some of the most requested. I think that one of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about is student voice. We have student review committees, and some of the things that students bring to the table as far as what they have an interest in has been really important in kind of curating our collections. And when we were implementing Comics Plus into the schools, it was just the overwhelming feedback that we got from our students at all levels, from elementary all the way through our high school, has really helped to incorporate it in what we've been doing. In 2015, we started a comics club at Roosevelt, and like I said, we had it where we were basically going out and looking for donations and things along those lines to kind of supplement what we were doing. And now with what we have, the students are creating lists of materials that they want to read. They're choosing a lot of those items, and we've been able to do club reads that way with what we have available to us with Comics Plus. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing at all of our different levels. So at our elementary level, when I started kind of looking at the data and the statistics of what we were doing, um, what I found was at the middle grade levels where a lot of our students were starting to really take hold with what was available to them. Um, Finding things for teachers and giving them adaptations to some of the things that they were using. Um, and that was the thing that across all levels of our district, from elementary, middle school, and high school, really sitting in with those staff members, having discussions on how this can be used in their classroom and incorporating into the curriculum has been vital, I think, for a lot of these items and materials to be used. For example, at our fifth grade level, students are required to do a biography, and what they're using now is the biographies that are available to them digitally. And what the students are finding is that the ability to use these graphic novels has been much easier. And I think one of the things too is being able to keep a biography collection up to date and relevant is sometimes a challenge that schools have, and it was definitely a challenge that we had. And so now this availability that we have with these titles is something that we can obviously look at other ways to be able to spend some of those resources, but it gives those students availability and plus an availability at any point. So we can have 2 or 3 students that are doing a biography on Jackie Robinson. They're now doing it online using the Comics Plus platform, and we don't have to have 3 or 4 available copies to them. So that has been beneficial for that. And talking to the students as far as we're incorporating this, their feedback, we do a lot with having students fill out, what their recommendation forms are, what are some of the things that they like as they go through some of these things. And we've incorporated into our library curriculum as well, as far as what the students have been doing. And we just find across the board, it was mentioned earlier too about we have a stronger ELL population that has come into our schools, and being able to have those materials and resources, we're curating those materials, but we have available access, basically right at our fingertips with what the Comics Plus application has offered to our students. And that's the visual aspect of that, the ability to help them to learn the English language has been vital, especially with our young readers that, at our elementary levels, we just didn't have those resources available for them. And now it's definitely been something that has helped them along. At our middle school level, we have graphic novels basically embedded into the curriculum. At our 8th grade level, students are actually just now finishing up Frankenstein. And what we found basically from the print material that students were reading, the novel, compared to what now they're using with the graphic novels, the information retention has been better. The ability to decode has been better for the students. So we're seeing that incorporating these into the curriculum at basically all 3 of our 6th and 7th and 8th grade levels, we're seeing that the students are understanding the information at a much better rate than when we were doing a lot of the things that were basically in print form, in the regular novel form. And then we run a school-wide competition called Battle of the Books. We've been doing that for years, and we always let students have choice in what they're doing. And the surprising thing this year is and I'll be honest with you, when we incorporated this into our building, when I went to teachers and to staff and said, here are some of the new tools that we're going to have, when I introduced Comics Plus to them, and the librarian that I have at the middle school worked with the staff, the buy-in was tremendous. I mean, we had staff members coming back to us saying, we want to do a classroom read with our, can you give us a recommendation? So when we kind of curated our Battle of the Books list for this year, I was surprised. I thought maybe we could incorporate 2 out of our 10 titles. We actually going to have 4 graphic novels out of our 10 titles, 2 that were chosen by students, 2 that were chosen by staff. They're really excited about incorporating this. The fact that, that they're going to have ready access to this whenever they want to. The fact they can go from one to the other without, having to come down and wonder if one of the other titles is available. I think that's going to be something that's going to be just a better avenue for our students. So like I said, it's gone kind of better than I even expected, but the buy-in and obviously showing staff, and I've sat in on ELA meetings, I've sat in on social studies, I basically went to every department, and you have to give that approach to here's what we have available, and here's if I found if I did some of that work to kind of show them, then the buy-in was definitely there, and so that's kind of really helped us out with that. And when we have students coming down now for materials, and we're seeing that in our circulation numbers, they're definitely going, especially a lot of the series things that are available, they're going from one to the other, and they can do it at their own pace. So that I think has been something that's been really beneficial with what we're seeing at that level. At our high school level, and I'll be honest with you, being in the high school for being in the high school that I've for 10 years or so as a teacher, it's the same thing. I think if I always had things available in my classroom. I remember teaching a Holocaust class and having mouse available for students to have access to. And now I basically ran all of the orientations when our students came down at the beginning of the year. And one of the last things that I did was talk about what, that we had this available to them. And the students were going through and looking at some of the things that we had. Teachers were down there at the same time, and they were saying, "Oh, okay, we can do something that is, especially for like our special education population, they're doing classroom reads on classics like the Count of Monte Cristo or other items that they have available for them, and the classes are able to understand and process that material." But with just having a different avenue to gain that information. And so we have probably 3 or 4 teachers in our high school building that have incorporated the classroom reads. And we're sitting down, we're going through I've sat in when the students are looking at the information, when they're going through it together. And it has been pretty remarkable with the feedback that we're getting from those students. And our comics club that we've had now for close to 8 years, they feel like they have a wide variety of choices. They have a committee that kind of sits down and looks at what the options are when they meet. They go through, they give. It's almost like they're selling what their choice is to the fellow club members. They decide on one, and then they go through, they read it, they come back, and it's all run by the students too, which is great because then the students are having that voice. They're running it. We'll throw in some ideas every once in a while, and then with all the grades too. And I didn't include this on here, but we also we do book tastings with all grade levels, and we've been able to incorporate now more graphic novels and manga into those book tastings for students to be able to, if students have read those, to recommend those, to look through those. And we find that we've seen an uptick in the amount of graphic novels and the manga that have been chosen during the book tastings that students come down and do with their various classes. So, and I will just say that the cost savings on this has been huge. We are in a district that has an abundant amount of resources to spend on material. It was one of the things when I first came on board and looked at the budgets that I had, because I basically run all the budgets for our buildings. And this was, we have about 1,000 kids in our middle school. We have 1,300 in our high school. And seeing what we have as the options available for our students because of this, it's just made it, one of the more valuable resources, that we have for our students. So, the fact it's being embedded, the fact that we have ELA teachers, in all levels of our secondary programs, incorporating this into what they're doing, the students are basically able to get, basically a different approach to understanding the materials. And we're finding that the feedback and the results from that have been excellent.
Good afternoon. My name is Tabrizia Jones. I'm the young adult librarian of my specific branch is the Pelham Parkway Van Ness branch, but it is part of the New York Public Library. You can see the beautiful building, the Schwartzman building with the lion. I have been a librarian, young adult librarian, for 9 years. And that's the exact amount of time that I started reading comics. I have not read comics all my life. I like to say, I hate to say that, but I did. It is an interesting origin story for me that I started reading comics as soon as I became a young adult librarian, because I started to see that the new teenage audience that I had, that was the only type of books that they would like to read. It was comics and manga. So I decided to pick up a comic, and I haven't stopped reading them since. So I'm always a big advocate reader of, and not only a reader, but an advocate for comics, and make sure to instill it to in most of my programming that I have at the public library. So just to talk about some of the programming that I do. So a big one that I do is a lot of author talks, and I did both at first virtual. So it was a lot of it during the pandemic and coming out of lockdown. We wanted to still provide a way to connect with other people, but then when we were allowed to do some in-person events, we had a great chance to have in-person author talks. So you can see here that at the Pelham Parkway Venice branch, we're visited by Chris Coden, and at the Wakefield branch, in both of these branches in the Bronx, sorry, I should have said that, that is Jackie Morrow at the Wakefield branch. And then we had a virtual webinar over Zoom with the creators of Stray Dogs, and also having like comic workshops. So this is a great way to have your, like, either if you're working in a school setting or even a public library setting, is a great way to have your patrons connect with the comics that they love in a more personal way. And it's also bringing it into the library in a more accessible and free setting, because books are pretty expensive. And this is a way to give them a chance to experience it if they would not have the chance if they visited their favorite comic shop, which is not always the case in certain areas, like in the Bronx. We don't have a lot of comic book shops, unfortunately. So we would have to travel into Manhattan, and not everyone has a chance to do that. So having these author talks and bringing these authors in an area, and also bringing it to their space that they have a more personal setting, is just like a really great resource for them. But besides author talks, we can have comic workshops. And last year we were visited by Julio Anta and Jacoby Salcedo. So they're the Eisner nominated team behind the graphic novel Frontera. And they wanted to promote Frontera, and they decided to do a comic workshop. So Jacoby's there drawing how, it was a great way to discuss how the comic workshop process is. The comic book processes. So they would write out a script, and then have people come up with the script and the ideas, and then Jacoby would instill those ideas into a panel onto a drawing board. It was a really interesting experience, and it gave people an idea of how much work and detail is putting into a comic workshop. In a comic book. I don't know why I keep saying that. And then also you have like a different variety of programs that I have. So George just mentioned book tasting. So we do a little bit differently. Well, I do a little bit differently. I do a virtual book tasting. So I do it online with other librarians, where we come together and um, we recommend books that we feel that are great books that are coming out of our collection, whether it's a book that we just read last week, or books, excuse me, that we read a couple of months ago or a couple of years ago. It's always ranging, and we always manage to incorporate comics into it as well. And also we have the teen comics chat. This started during the pandemic, and it is still growing now. And this is also a monthly program, where we give like a different range of comics that we three librarians have read, and we feel like teens should read. And it always range from even comics that are the age group is for children, or age group is for teens, or even for adults. Because in our library, the comics, teens who have a teen library card, they're able to check out a children's book, a teen book, or an adult book. So even though we do want to highlight books that are targeted towards teens, it's not really fair to just limit to them, because their card gives them access to adult and children's books. So we want to give them a wide range of different comics that are out there, and and for those that that they meet their interests. And I didn't put this on the slide, but I did want to mention the anime club. So we do have a bi-weekly anime club that we have at our branch, and a lot of NYPL branches have this, where they show for free different anime programs to the teen audiences. Crunchyroll gives a great opportunity for public libraries and also school libraries as well. If you run a manga or anime club, they will give you a free account, a 60-day premium account. You just have to keep renewing it every 60 days. Just make sure to sign in with your official public library, school library account. But it gives you more access to the catalog, doesn't let you show ads. And the way that we do it is we try to highlight anime and connect it to the manga that's on our shelves, so it can give more eyes to the manga and the anime that is out there, instead of the ones that are the most popular and the most like that have the more eyes on it, even though occasionally we do show the most popular ones, but we try to give the ones that are like under the radar, and try to encourage circulation of the manga titles that don't get as much attention as they deserve. And speaking of manga titles, I thought this was a different side, but this was another initiative that we had this past March, was the month of March Madness. So I won't go into really great detail about this because you can view our panel presentation when you get these slides. But this was an initiative that we had when we won an innovation grant, an internal innovation grant that we had at the library, where we pit different manga titles in different 12 categories, and we encourage teen audience and also other audience patrons in different 15 libraries to vote for which manga title should reign supreme in the different 12 categories. So for the overall month that we had in March, we had 5,169 votes, and the overall winner, it was A Silent Voice. So it gave us like we were shocked by that. We didn't think A Silent Voice would win. We thought Demon Slayer or My Hero Academia would win. But I wanted to mention this because it is a great programming idea, because not only it gives a chance for, especially for teens, to vote for something, but also it gives you as the librarian or the teacher an idea of what are the most popular titles, or what your teens or even kids are reading at the moment. Because like I said, we were surprised at Silent Voice that reigned supreme. So that might encourage you in your collection to maybe order more copies of A Silent Voice in the collection. Or maybe if another manga title or comic title would win. But it also gave us a chance to incorporate different types of programmings, like I said, anime clubs or button making. So you just had different ideas in that sense. And then finally, so I just wanted to show that this is my manga collection at the Van Ness branch. That's only half of it. It actually goes onto the other side. But I wanted to give you a sense of how it's packed to the rim, because manga is a very popular genre at my branch. Not genre, format at my branch. A lot of the teens and adults, they absolutely love it. And I try my best to like highlight it with different staff picks. So we have these staff pick cards at the New York Public Library, and you might see them occasionally in most branches, where we try to highlight titles. So like I said in the beginning, highlighting titles that we feel they're under the radar and don't get as much attention as they deserve. So for example, Magus of the Library. I love Magus of the Library, and I try to encourage teens, kids, adults to read this amazing series. And these type of staff picks work because it draws them attention. So not only to this book, but to the other books surrounding it. And it gives them a chance to try something new. And I wanted to highlight the social media staff pick. This is what I did during when we were locked down, where we couldn't be in person or even to to touch or to even interact with people. It was very useful during the pandemic. We were able to highlight a lot of manga titles. Most of them were online, but it was a great way to highlight the manga titles that didn't have a high hold list and maybe wanted to draw attention and give a chance for people to, again, read different things. And this is also, it ties in with comics as well, because it just, it gives a great way to incorporate different types of readers advisory, whether if it's in person or doing a social media staff picks. It just gives it gives patrons a chance to interact with their books in a different way. Yeah, that's it. So thank you.
Before we jump into some of the questions that have come in, can the two school panelists and Tabrizia from the public library side, you've both talked about kind of your school and library situations. Do any of you have examples partnering in the other direction, schools with the public library or public library with the local schools?
So I can touch on that for a second. So one of the things that I sit on, the city that I live in, I sit on their commission for their public library, but also the one here in Wyandotte, I've known for, many people for years. So one of the first things I did is set up meetings with them, and they come in and work with our kids on getting library cards, on getting, on sharing resources. I do a monthly newsletter with and include a section on our public library of what they're doing there. So, when they see people coming in from the public library to talk to them about, programs that they're doing, then it gets, we're definitely seeing, and they're seeing an increase in the students that are coming to them. So I think it's important. It's one of our district visions is to have that community outreach. So I've worked on my aspect to try to get that with our public library.
New York City public schools can be a little hard to get into sometimes because it depends on scheduling and also we have like little campus schools inside, but there are I have talked to other librarians that they have had successes where they've had like a graphic novel book club, because we do have a organization, My Library NYC, where a lot of school librarians and teachers can order classroom sets, and it's like a book on like a mini book club in a box kind of thing, and they can check out books to them, and then they can have a book club or a screening in the school library. So that is one way to partnership, like with the public libraries, partnership with school libraries. But we do a lot of outreach and trying to make sure to let them know, the students and also the teachers and librarians, about the different resources that the public libraries have, especially with their educators card, because we do have a possibility that educators can have an educators card and they can get those resources. So that is also beneficial to them as well.
With our public library, our teen public librarian, we connected with her and she was able to come in and be a support, another co-sponsor for our anime club. And she helped provide a list of appropriate manga for our age group. Um, as Tabrizia was saying, I am not an avid manga reader. I've just really kind of gotten into graphic novels. Manga is a little bit hard for like my brain to process. So it was really nice to have her as an extra resource for our students as I'm developing our collection. And she was great at giving me a list and some resources to go through and find ways to add or titles to add to our collection.
So let's talk a little bit about collections in general, and then we'll get back into programming. So a couple of common questions that came up from registrants and variation that we're getting here. Can you first talk about tips for building a collection? And we've had particular attention. There was one very funny question about how do you appeal to teens without bribing them with food. So maybe let's talk about teens in particular. what are some recommendations you have around building a collection for teens and engaging them with that collection so that those titles circulate? Whoever wants to go first.
I can go first. So I applaud that question about teens not bribing teens with food because I don't like bribing teens. I don't do that. I'm so against that. But getting teens to interest in your collection, take their suggestions because I did that a lot, especially when we were coming out of the pandemic. There were a lot of series that I did not know about, and because I asked for suggestions from them. So, for example, My Dress Up Darling was a, a big manga series. It was its popularity is coming down a little bit, but it was really big like in 2021, 2022. And for some reason, it was only digitally. And then they did eventually release it in print. But I had to tell them, it's like, unfortunately, we can't get it in print. It's only available digitally. But here are some other titles that might be of interest to you that we have in print. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But you're just gonna have to take those kind of chances. But really listening to them, the type of manga titles that are manga titles and comics, because some do like comics, especially web comics, comics that are being printed from webtoons. Taking suggestions from that would be really beneficial. You may not always get it because I know two of my collection people from Book Ops are here, but we may not always get it, but it's always worth to try. And if we don't get it, then I can always mention read-alike titles to them of books that we already have in their collection, both print and digitally.
So I think, what was just mentioned is it's important. That student voice piece is important. I mean, we have digital ways and print ways as we want students to be able to give us suggestions. But what we started doing too is taking things even outside the library walls. So like, one of the things I noticed in our school was all these different groups would put stuff around the school as far as what they were promoting. So we made book lists. We would just go on once a month and made lists of different things that are popular or new, and we've included manga and graphic novels in that. So students are seeing that. They're seeing that when they're walking into the lunchroom. They're seeing that when they're walking around the hallways. Because we thought to ourselves, okay, everybody else is promoting what they're doing. Why can't we? So I think the promotion piece is huge. We have a news program that is run every day in our school. First thing I did, start a school year. We want to be on there, as much as we can. If it's every other week, something along those ways. So and that's what, starts getting that trickle. And then, eventually the floodgates start opening up as far as what kids see out there. And it's, even asked to put inside classrooms. So all of our ELA teachers, they'll have those book lists that we make going in their rooms. So kids are seeing that. I mean, they could be staring off and looking at different things going on, and they might stare at that one day. And so that's, it's about, sometimes I just don't realize what you have or what you have access to, and getting that out there, is visually, is just, that's, I think, has been one of our biggest improvements this year.
We've very mindfully incorporated graphic novels and manga into any reading challenges that we have for the school, because I think, promotes our collection on top of promoting that it is real reading, just along with audiobooks. And I think kids, or teens in particular, when you are acknowledging what they enjoy, they're more likely to come and ask you for recommendations when, all of My Hero Academia is checked out, all of Naruto's checked out. What else could I check out that's close to this? And then I think it also bridges between other, formats eventually. And as far as the not food bribes, it's really hard. because I was very against food bribes and candy. But they love Jolly Ranchers. So I will give them some Jolly Ranchers sometimes as part of like, our food challenge or our reading challenges. We have a 40 book challenge this year. And so graphic novels is included in that in manga. And they can win non-food items, but again, like that's a budget thing. So luckily, like I said, my principal fully supports reading, and whatever gets hands in the kids or books in kids' hands, that's all that matters. So um, there are some things that you can do. It's just food is just the easiest. I mean, I love a snack too. So
So I'm going to combine two questions. One we get a lot, and one we've gotten a few versions of on this one. So there's the still persistent belief in some circles that comics aren't real reading. So that's a constant battle. And then there's the goal, I'll put it, of in some schools in particular, of how do you make that connection to the classroom? The implication sometimes being the joy of independent reading isn't enough to really validate class comics. You've got to find a way to connect them to the curriculum specifically. So beyond school-wide reads, where you kind of backdoor that, and Danielle's example really kind of nailed to a direct curriculum integration and outcome. Do you have any other particular kind of classroom or even teacher level tips to A, counter the book comics aren't real reading argument, and then B, that they have valid educational beyond just kind of general research and belief? Like, have you found a specific topic or type of book that really works well to kind of bridge that gap?
I found, I mean, one, presenting our teachers with solid evidence and research was, I think, helped sort of shift their mindset, and then seeing the example. I think they really need to be able to see what the actual value is. So if you come to them with a text that really supports whatever they're doing. So we have one of our science teachers. I mean, I feel like she was one of the best examples because very particular about the way that she teaches, and this is the way that it is. And then eventually she found print comics that were science based to incorporate into I can't remember what strand it was, but to incorporate into her class, and the kids loved it. And I think when you get one teacher in, it's easier to then bring in the other teachers. Like I said, the social studies teacher, she went on automatically and looked for what their topics are, and were there graphic novels in or manga in Comics Plus that correlate to that. Once, I mean, you could like that create a book list to show these are the books that specifically will align to whatever content you are teaching at that time. We have math. There's math comics in Comics Plus that we'll be incorporating this year by doing the reading, and then they'll do breakout sessions based on that uh, that skill that they're learning. So now I'm not really sure if that answered your question, but I think
That's
that there's lots of ways. You just have to guide them. As you're guiding students, you have to guide the teachers as well.
And I think it's like a practice what you preach type thing. And I think so many times when teachers are approached with ideas, it's, they get that one off, and then how do you scaffold from that? And I think that's the thing where if I've shown them, and I did, originally at a school-wide level, but then break it down by a grade level, by a department level, going in, showing them specific examples, working with our fifth graders on those biography reports. It also helps. I have two elementary kids at home, so they're my guinea pigs with everything. I have a third grader and a fifth grader, but when I saw them light up, especially my fifth grader on doing those biographies, I'm like, okay, this is something I know that we can carry over into our schools and work on that level approach. So, when they know that they have a partner, I think that is the key for them incorporating something that they may not themselves have that strong grasp of. And so, and I think, we give them the information, we give them the reasoning and the research behind it. But I think it's helping kind of being that partner with them and realizing that we're not just telling you that, this is, how it can be used, but also showing them as well. And I think that's helped out with, I have some, and I'm fortunate, I have some that take it and roll with it. And then I have others that, you just kind of build that. Once you build that relationship level with them, then, it works pretty well.
Well, speaking from a public library perspective, I have noticed that a lot of teachers are hesitant to introduce comics into their curriculum. And then sometimes it is beneficial, things like a little bit what Danielle and George said, that if you show them the different variety of comics that are out there that can teach something and also in a more accessible and fun way, then and to see how like George's kids they lit up to the comic and to the information that was being taught to them. And I think it's just showing them that way that is very beneficial. I think it's like very more hands-on and a more in-person type experience. That's why I really try to promote Comics Plus, because there's just so many stuff on there that teachers can utilize in an extreme way. And there's like a lot of um, a variety of comics and manga that puts information into a fun format. Like, for example, we learned the Constitution in a very heavy, old, dusty textbook. Now kids can learn about the Constitution in a comic book format. So it's just, you can learn about information in a variety of ways. And I think it's just finding ways to display that to teachers and have the chance for younger patrons to experience that.
So we're gonna have time for two more quick questions. So one is about author events, and Tabrizia, I'll start with you since you focused on that, but also on the school side, if you've got experience there. What's the best, how do you determine who to bring? And what are some basic tips on coordinating that? Are you working directly with creators, through their publishers?
So the first thing I tell people when doing an author talk, make sure you like the comic that you want to talk to them about. Because if you're just choosing a comic book or a comic book creator and illustrator because you think that they'll like draw a big audience, that's the completely wrong reason to do it. Make sure to choose someone that you actually like the book, and you respect their work, because you're going to have a conversation with that person, and you want to have and make sure it's a fruitful and beneficial conversation, and the audience will see that. Because a lot of the author talks I've done, they've seen that it's a really great and positive response from it, because they see that I personally like the book. So that's the number one thing. The second thing is you can always reach out to the publisher. Publishers love working with libraries, even both public and school libraries. They love working with libraries. They love getting their books into uh, all ages' hands, adults, teens, and adults and children. Sorry. So we're connecting with them directly. I have a great relationship with Image Comics, and also Harper Alley. They always love doing great author talks and like author visits in libraries. So reaching out to the publishers is one way, and also you can reach out to the creators personally, because some of them do not mind doing that. They actually encourage it. If you go on their website, they might have it on their website. It's like, yeah, reach out to me to see if I do an author visit. Then there might be a fee, or you can offer, like sometimes I offer, say, like in lieu of a fee, I can purchase your books and I can give as a free giveaway to the audience members of the author talk.
We have just started. We're actually doing the Kwame Alexander Author Study Program this year. I have not gotten really into author visit logistics yet.
A little harder on the school side.
Yeah, same here with me being back in this role now for about a year. We've explored possibilities and kind of how we can make it work with, it's easier probably for our secondary because we only have one middle school, one high school. For our elementaries to be able to make something like that work. There are in the state a lot of authors that have had interest. It's sometimes a funding source too, to be able to get them to your school. And we've explored some options, but nothing concrete.
All right. So we still have questions coming up. I'm going to pick one last one. Anything else, when we put the archive up, we will have links to the various resources that were discussed. A couple of the questions are related to previous webcasts we did, including a Comics 101 that gets into a lot of the collection questions that have come up, and one specifically around higher ed for our attendee who was asking from a college perspective. So apologies that we couldn't get to everything, but I'm going to drop this one in at the end because I was kind of curious myself. Talk a little bit about book tastings. What exactly is that, and how does that work?
You want to go, George? Okay. Book tasting is, so I can't take credit for this because I probably same with George. I just did a lot of like a huge internet search and it just popped up. So it is giving a taste of the collection to the patrons. So public libraries and school libraries have a huge a huge amount of books in their collection, and there's always a huge amount of books being published every year. So it's a way to condense it in a way. It's like, okay, here are some of the books that we feel that really did something for us, and we think we want to recommend it to you. So that's like what book tasting is. So probably in George's case, he probably has like the books laid out on the table and maybe has like a printed menu because if it's like giving first impressions of the book. And for me, it's like I said, we book talk the book virtually to registrants. And it gives a great way to highlight those books that, yes, maybe are best-selling books, but also books that you may not have have missed your radar. You haven't had the chance to see it, and this is a great opportunity for you to check it out.
Yeah, and I will say it's evolved through the years. A lot of it's been going to conferences and seeing what people have done. There was one at our state conference just a couple weeks ago, and somebody had a great idea of putting out like, almost like a tablecloth type idea. And if somebody had read that book or had, and they write down like a little, so as you're kind of moving around or getting different ideas, if you're going around to different tables, you're kind of seeing some of the student responses to things. Somebody had it too, where as they're looking at different ones that they may be interested in, um, little smiley, like little emojis for like what they think about that based on like 4 or 5 different criteria about the book too. So it's evolved. Same thing. There was a lot of things out there that I saw with it. I thought it was something that gave students kind of a, if they're trying to find something that might interest them. And we've incorporated different types of genres and formats into that. And it really has kind of helped them to kind of expand because sometimes students are, they have that preference, but by seeing different things that are out there, it's definitely expand, their idea of what exists.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending. We ran a few minutes long, so thank you for those of you who stuck around, and thank you for the compliments in the questions. I thought there was another question coming in. Danielle, George, and Tabrizia, thank you for taking the time and sharing your experience and expertise. The archive version on our site will have the links we talked about from the presentations, including the presentations themselves. And I'm going to gather some of the answers to the questions that were asked here and try and put those together into a little FAQ at the end there. So thank you for joining us. I'm Guido Charles Gonzalez for LibraryPass, and we'll see you soon.